A grand trine pattern is formed by three planets positioned approximately 120 degrees apart around the circle. This is an aspect of ease and flow, conceptual and interpretive ability, of service, and sensitivity to the senses rather than sensuality. It denotes the ability to feel compassion. Can be apathetic and indifferent to responsibilities if there are not enough challenging aspects in the pattern. Grand trine in fire. A grand trine in fire signs, Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, is a rare chart shape, indicative of a special gift that can be developed with the right sort of understanding and work, but which notoriously can produce a wasted crop or even a criminal outcome. The creative, inspirational power of the grand trine is more evident where it is the trine in fire, since the element of fire is itself vital, self-expressive and spontaneous in action, seeking to manifest through direct expression of its potential. Vision is strongly emphasized, but so also is egotism, selfishness, an unconscious assumption of special individual privilege and heightened pride in self. This individual will exhibit courage, adventurousness, risk-taking and even gambling, combined with an innocence that might ultimately rather prove to amount to naivety, lack of forethought or even culpable carelessness, and will be all the more dangerous because this individual has an unshakable faith in self as eerily invincible, strangely protected from harm and taking on impossible odds. These gambles will indeed produce amazing results but will ultimately prove to be hubris and turn to ashes. They could well have the seeds of their own destruction. There will be impulsiveness, and acting out of unacknowledged psychological material could lead to undoing. These qualities need spiritual understanding, otherwise there will be a growing sense of the emptiness and impermanence of such ego striving and social climbing, and a gathering horror at the harm and stress caused from striving so persistently and so long. A grand trine in water. A grand trine in the water signs has the constituent planets in Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. The passive, receptive and protective power of the trine is emphasized. Water, like the trine, seeks tranquility and a soothing sense of peaceful exchange. Powers of detection are above average. There's a degree of psychic sensitivity. The flowing expression of the feeling nature permits him to withdraw easily into his inner private world where he often experiences contentment on deeply subjective levels. Unless there are adequate dynamic principles operating in the chart, that is fire planets and angular houses, or even a fixed T-square, this particular grand trine can foster an escapist temperament too vulnerable to effectively channel its emotional overload in a constructive manner. There tends to be an exaggerated need for mothering, dependency, safety from threat, overcaution, dithering. And the more subtly these needs express themselves, the more insidious their effect. This is potentially the most problematic of the grand trines. The native is potential hard to get to know. He may feel disconnected from his outer world and out of tune with his surroundings. Yet there is potential for well-developed empathy and sympathy and supportive nurturing, the hidden comforter, the healer of the sick, supportive and nurturing. It's an asset for psychiatric work, medical fields or psychic counseling. In a weak chart, however, there could be the tendency to feel easily defeated, dejected, insecure, the gentle dreamer who retreats into fantasy, illusion and imagination. This is the figure, par excellence, for probing into the hidden mysteries of life. The Earth Grand Trine. The Earth Grand Trine seeks to preserve the status quo of existing conditions it feels securely supported by. Both element and aspect do not respond well to drastic, critical changes in life affairs. The capacity to attract, accumulate, and skillfully manage resources is usually powerfully developed. Yet the drive to venture out into the world and make an aggressive effort to obtain such resources is often lacking. In the chart of a less ambitious individual, this grand trine is apt to express as a very self-indulgent, materialistic influence, or one that keeps the individual firmly rooted and centered in the limited world of matter, which may not be desirable for inner growth in the long run. One of the constructive features of a well-handled Earth Grand Trine is that it has remarkable endurance and persistence, allowing the individual to steadily concentrate his attention upon concrete objectives without being distracted or thrown off course. Once committed to a goal, he is able to work long and hard towards valued accomplishment. He succeeds because he can skillfully consolidate his vast energy reserves and constantly plod on until he achieves the solid results he desires. However, unlike mere earth emphasis alone, the dynamics of the Grand Trine suggests an extra measure of inspiration, insight, and vision. The individual may possess tremendous organizational ability and practical know-how, since earth trines enable one to visualize perfect or ideal structure and form. There can be an uncommon amount of common sense shown. Creative resourcefulness is one of this Grand Trine's special assets. The Grand Trine in air. With the air Grand Trine, the individual can feel satisfied living in his head without having to express himself overtly in the external world. Both element and aspect share as a common denominator the natural inclination to conceptualize and create on an abstract level. Thus, the impractical side of the trine can be more evident with this configuration if the individual is unable to ground his idealistic insights. This individual is likely to be very socially curious, broad-minded, and tolerant. Trines are benevolent and easygoing. But he may not necessarily find himself deeply or passionately involved with others on a more one-to-one basis. The natural inclination here is to remain detached, observant, non-committal, and basically free to explore whatever attracts the attention of the mind. Great inner satisfaction occurs when he is able to have a variety of relationships that put few demands upon him. This suggests that one with an air Grand Trine may find it quite a challenge to remain emotionally constant with another without interpreting this as a stifling entanglement. Nevertheless, this Grand Trine confers above-average educational ability, an eager intellect, and an ability to have a wide perspective of life. He can take pleasure in learning new information about the world he lives in, and thus tends to be the eternal student type.